The ending of 72 Hours transforms what begins as a chaotic bachelor party comedy into a heartfelt story about growing up, even at 40 years old. While the film spends most of its runtime throwing Joe into ridiculous situations, including drug traffickers, cocaine-fueled alter egos, whale penis smugglers, hidden cameras, and mistaken identities, the ending asks a much simpler question. What matters more, chasing professional success or choosing the people you love? By the end of the film, Joe finally discovers the answer. Throughout the movie, Joe believes his greatest problem is that he's becoming irrelevant. After being told he no longer understands Gen Z, Joe becomes obsessed with proving that he still belongs in an industry dominated by younger creatives. That's why he throws himself into the Miami bachelor party in the first place. He isn't looking for friendship or adventure. He's treating the entire weekend as market research. Everything he does serves that goal. He secretly records conversations, studies buying habits, listens to slang, and even endures humiliation because he believes authentic footage will save his career. However, the very thing he fears losing, his humanity, is exactly what the trip gives back to him. The bachelor party begins as a business opportunity, but somewhere between police chases, disastrous yacht parties, being stranded on an island, and nearly getting executed by a drug cartel, Joe stops viewing the younger men as research subjects. They become his friends. That change is why the hidden camera reveal hurts everyone so deeply. Mason, Nick, Hunter, and Freshman realize that someone they trusted had been documenting their most personal moments without permission. To them, Joe never saw them as people, only as content. It's the lowest point of the film because Joe's desperation for professional success has cost him something far more valuable. One of the movie's funniest running jokes is Joe's transformation into Ricardo Montana, the absurd crime lord persona created after taking far too much cocaine. On the surface, Ricardo exists purely for comedy. He speaks with an exaggerated accent, believes he's an untouchable gangster, and loudly declares himself El Rey de Miami. But Ricardo also symbolizes everything Joe wishes he could be. Joe spends most of the movie second-guessing himself. He's worried about aging, he's insecure about younger co-workers replacing him, he's terrified of losing Jennifer, he's afraid his best years are behind him. Ricardo has none of those fears. He walks into every room convinced he's the most powerful man alive. The joke is that Ricardo is completely fake. Eventually, the illusion falls apart during the hostage exchange. Instead of continuing the act, Joe finally tells the truth. He admits Ricardo never existed. He is simply an insecure 40-year-old advertising executive trying to convince himself that he still matters. And that honesty accomplishes what the fake persona never could. Rather than executing him, the drug boss actually listens. Considering everything Joe accidentally causes, the drug boss has every reason to kill him. Joe unknowingly steals an enormous shipment of cocaine, he impersonates an international drug lord, he humiliates the organization multiple times, he wastes everyone's time with ridiculous lies, yet none of those things matter. When Joe finally drops the Ricardo act, the confrontation becomes emotional. Instead of talking about drugs, both men begin talking about family. The turning point comes when the boss recognizes his late father's jacket, the same one Joe borrowed while staying at the mansion. The jacket reminds him of the person he misses most. For the first time, he stops seeing Joe as an enemy and instead sees another man struggling with his own regrets and fears. Joe's confession is genuine. He isn't asking to save himself, he's asking for the lives of his friends. That honesty breaks through the criminal facade. Rather than rewarding Joe's deception, the boss rewards his willingness to finally tell the truth. It's one of the film's biggest surprises because violence is avoided not through action but through vulnerability. Jennifer spends most of the movie believing she's less important to Joe than his career. From her perspective, the evidence is overwhelming. When she receives a prestigious offer from the Mayo Clinic, she's already imagining their future together. Joe, meanwhile, is worried about promotions. When she thinks he's about to propose, he instead announces that he's leaving for Miami with strangers. Later, she hears women screaming in the background during a nightclub phone call. Everything seems to confirm that Joe is choosing work and excitement over their relationship. The bachelor weekend completely changes Joe's priorities. Watching Mason openly celebrate marriage forces Joe to confront something he's been avoiding. Mason isn't afraid of commitment, he's excited by it. His happiness contrasts sharply with Joe's endless anxiety about timing, money, and career advancement. By the time Joe returns home, he understands that waiting for the perfect moment nearly cost him the woman he loves. Instead of offering excuses, he tells Jennifer exactly what she needed to hear. He chooses her over his job. Even more importantly, he proves it through action. He's willing to leave New York, he's willing to start over professionally, and he's willing to build a life around the relationship instead of asking Jennifer to keep sacrificing for his ambitions. That's the growth Jennifer had been waiting to see. Interestingly, Joe doesn't achieve success the way he originally intended. His carefully planned advertising campaign is destroyed when Nick throws his laptop into the aquarium after discovering the secret recordings. For a while, it appears everything has been lost. However, Nick secretly preserved much of the footage, allowing Joe to salvage the project later. More importantly, Joe no longer wants to keep chasing promotions inside a company that views him as outdated. Instead, he follows Barry's earlier advice. Rather than fighting to become Chief Creative Officer, Joe launches his own agency. It's a subtle but important ending. At the beginning of the movie, Joe desperately wanted validation from other people. By the end, he's creating something for himself. The promotion no longer matters, his independence does. Every member of the group also finishes the story in a healthier place. Mason gets the wedding he always wanted and finally marries Emily without letting the bachelor weekend ruin their relationship. Nick learns that friendship doesn't disappear simply because people grow older or get married. His fear throughout the movie was never really about losing Mason. It was about being left behind. By the wedding, he's accepted that friendships evolve instead of ending. Hunter finally moves beyond the heartbreak that had defined him for so long. Joe's encouragement, combined with everything the group survives together, helps him begin rebuilding his confidence. Freshman, meanwhile, continues being the film's unpredictable wild card. His ability to unexpectedly speak Japanese becomes one of the reasons the group survives the final confrontation, turning what initially seemed like another running joke into an important payoff. By the wedding, the bachelor party has become something much more meaningful than a weekend of drinking. They're genuinely closer than when the trip began. Although 72 Hours constantly escalates into outrageous comedy, its final message is grounded. Joe spends the entire movie believing that staying young means understanding Gen Z trends, learning new slang, and proving he can still keep up with younger people. The trip teaches him something entirely different. Growing older doesn't mean becoming irrelevant. It means learning what deserves your attention. By the end of the film, Joe finally stops chasing validation and starts investing in the relationships that actually give his life meaning. His career survives, his relationship survives, and his friendships survive. But only because he finally realizes that success isn't measured by promotions or viral advertising campaigns. It's measured by the people who still choose to stand beside you after you've made every possible mistake. That's why the film closes not with another wild adventure, but with Mason's wedding. After 72 hours of absolute chaos, the happiest moment isn't escaping gangsters or landing a big client. It's watching people who almost lost each other celebrate the future they've chosen together.